Stage next is one of our featured storytellers this evening, and his name is Chris Tebbetts. Chris loves and has always loved storytelling in its many forms. Besides growing up as a book-devouring, comic book-loving, too-much TV-watching movie hound, his background includes a college major in film production, a decade as a mostly starving theater artist, and more recently, 15 years of writing for kids and teens, including the middle school books that he's written with James Patterson, and the Stranded series he wrote with Jeff Probst from TV's Survivor. And his new solo project is a young adult novel called Me, Myself, and Him. Can we please welcome storyteller Chris Tebbetts?
So, the last thing I remember before passing out is taking in a lungful of nitrous oxide and closing my eyes. My friend and coworker at the time, also named Chris, tells me that I set down the whipped cream cartridge, stood up, paused like I wasn't going anywhere, and then fell forward, almost slow motion, like a tree going down, until I landed face first on the cement. All of that's blank in my memory. It had started out as a regular evening. I'd put on my polyester houndstooth check uniform and went to scoop ice cream at Friendly's, just like I've been doing all summer since coming home from college. I don't remember the shift itself, but I can tell you that it ended in one of the usual ways, which is to say, hanging out behind the restaurant after closing with Chris and his friend Rob, listening to music from Rob's car, smoking Camel Lights, and ultimately, usually, huffing whippets out of empty whipped cream cans. Friendly's had plenty of those, of course. We kept the empties in cases on the back porch behind the restaurant as well. And with the whipped cream gone, all that was left inside was the nitrous oxide gas that we frequently put to use for the head buzz it gave us. It wasn't unusual to suck down 8 or 10 hits at a time, but I was only on my second hit that night when I lost consciousness. I have no idea how long I was out. And then when I woke up, if that's what you can call it, the first thing I saw, inexplicably, were these blue and yellow streaks moving away from me like paint running down a windshield. On the other side of that, I saw one of Chris's chunky black work shoes, right there in front of my face. Hang on, man, it's gonna be okay. I called the ambulance, you're okay. I wasn't, though. Not yet. Even though I could see that shoe and hear Chris's voice, they weren't at that time Chris's shoe and Chris's voice. They were just shoe and voice. I had no idea where I was, or how I'd gotten there, or why everything was sideways. The first thing that made any kind of sense was the sound of the siren. I knew that meant help was on the way. That was good. At least I knew something. And then there were more people there. EMTs, police, more shoes. A cop was kneeling down next to me. It was starting to come together. I heard, "What's your name, son?" It may or may not have been the first time he asked, but when I tried to answer, it all just came out a garble. Everything was just one combination or another of E, L, G, A, and R. The first thing I actually got out was, "I'm having trouble speaking," which didn't seem like it needed to be pointed out, but in any case, he took that as his cue and walked away. After that, they fitted me with one of those big, thick collars and loaded me onto the gurney. I remember the back of the ambulance was like this lit portal with night all around it, and I slid right inside. And then we were moving. To be honest, some part of me had always wanted to be whisked away in an ambulance. It was on the list with fire truck, glider, helicopter, and I couldn't help noticing that at least one of those things was actually happening. The whole thing was so much like a movie or TV show that reality got kind of drowned out. Riding in an ambulance was all front and center. I am so screwed, wouldn't show up for another 45 minutes or so. The best of it, the dramatic apex, if there was such a thing, came when we got to the hospital. They wheeled me straight through the emergency room. I didn't know it yet, but my hair was standing straight on end with blood, with dried blood. My nose was gashed. The top half of my face was striped with whatever color that dried blood might have been by then. And all eyes were on me, I noticed, as they wheeled me past everyone with their apparently lesser emergencies and right into the treatment area. But a couple hours later, and after an exam, I was told that my x-ray showed no signs of breakage and I was essentially free to go. It was like anticlimax at its best. Today, anyone who looks at my nose up close or feels this cracked ridge that didn't used to be there, or the few friends who have had the gumption to stick their fingers in both of my nostrils to feel how wildly different they are from one another, they may have another idea about the breakage situation, but that's what I was told, and I was sent home without so much as a bandage on my face. In a weird way, the weird joke of it all was about everything that didn't happen after my accident. My face never hurt, not once. I didn't wither with shame when I looked in the mirror. I didn't get off drugs forever. I didn't even lose my job at Friendly's. Not even after a story about the accident showed up in the Xenia Daily Gazette, naming me and the restaurant with the headline, "Whipped cream not up to snuff." For my parents' part, they weren't hysterical about it or anything, but they did ask me to see a drug counselor. And that, in turn, landed the three of us in a group program for 6 weeks, a 6-week group program where parents and guardians were required to attend. And I'm not gonna say I didn't belong there, but I will say that it was weird at best to stand up after the guy who had beaten up his girlfriend over a bottle of Jack Daniels, so I could tell everyone about how I smashed my face sucking whipped cream gas out of the cans at Friendly's. At that point, I think my parents recognized it as a diminishing returns kind of situation, and they opted the three of us out of the rest of that program. Which is also where my story comes to a kind of abrupt end, and maybe sooner than it should have in this grand scheme of things. Once in a while, life sends us these big events that we're supposed to take instruction from and learn and grow, theoretically. For my part, I think this one had the potential to shape me in some kind of long-lasting way. And while that's certainly true for what happened to my face that night, I can't honestly say the same is true for the rest of me. It's like sometimes fortune fires and misses. And I've always had the sense that this story was supposed to have more to it than what actually happened. Sometimes, though, all you get from the experience is the story itself. And then the question becomes, well, what do you want to do with that? And sometimes that question takes 35 years to answer. For my part, I may have never gotten the kind of insight or perspective that high school health teachers everywhere would have wished for my teenage self, but I did finally eventually figure out a way to give this thing its own ending. I made it the first chapter of my new novel, which is out today, by the way. Thank you.
Chris, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Be safe out there, guys. Whipped cream is delicious, but only in so many different ways. As Chris mentioned, his book came out today. Round of applause for that. Happy Publishing Day. And thanks to our friends at Flying Pig Bookstore in Shelburne, you can buy it here tonight in this building. And Chris will even sign it for you. And also, this piece of paper tells me, which means that it's official and true, that if he likes you, he might be willing to call you at night and read it to you. Yeah. Huge privileges, guys. Make sure you get his direct extension in that book signature with you, yes? Alrighty, so we're gonna go into a 10-minute reception, 15-minute intermission, and then we'll get back in here. We have our second feature teller and then 5 more storytellers for you. We'll see you soon. Thank you.